If you've just got yourself the MOZA R21 Ultra and you're struggling to get the force feedback feeling right, this is exactly how I tune mine inside a MOZA pit house with a big focus on the force feedback curve and equalizer settings. Now of course, force feedback is completely personal. What feels perfect to me might feel completely different to you, and that's the whole point of tuning your wheel properly. There's no single perfect setup. This is just how I personally tune my wheelbase to get the wheel feeling smooth, detailed and predictable for the way I drive, because this is where most people either make their wheel feel incredible or completely ruin it. The biggest mistake people make is turning everything up to 100%. More force doesn't mean better force feedback. All that does is create clipping. This is where the wheel hits maximum force too early and you lose loads of detail. Instead of feeling what the car is doing, everything just feels heavy and numb. So this is how I tune my MOZA R21 Ultra to keep the wheel smooth, detailed and predictable. First things first, make sure your wheelbase firmware and MOZA Pit House software are fully updated. Then open up the MOZA Pit House app and head straight to your base settings. The first thing I adjust is the overall game force feedback intensity. I normally keep mine around 70 to 80% depending on what game I'm playing. That gives me strong force feedback without overloading the wheelbase. Then I set my maximum torque output somewhere similar depending on the game. Again, don't just max this out. You want usable detail, not just raw strength. Now this is where things really start to change. The force feedback equalizer. This completely changes how the wheel delivers force feedback. Starting with the low frequency. The low frequency controls the heavier forces in the wheel. This is what gives you the weight of the car through corners and that loaded up steering feel. I normally keep this around 100 to 110%. Too high and the wheel starts feeling muddy and overly heavy. Too low, the car loses weight and feels disconnected. Next is the mid frequency. This is by far the most important setting for me. This is where almost all of the detail comes from. Curbs, tyre scrub, grip loss, weight transfer, road feel. This is the setting that really brings the car alive. I normally run this around 150 to 160% on my MOZA R21. If your wheel feels dull or lifeless, this is usually the first setting you want to adjust. Then we move on to the high frequency. This controls the finer vibrations and the sharper details coming through the wheel. Things like road texture and smaller chatter. I normally keep this lower than the others because too much high frequency can make the wheel feel grainy, sharp and noisy. You want detail, but you still want the wheel to feel smooth. But the setting that completely changes the personality of the wheel is the force feedback curve. The force feedback curve controls how aggressively force builds up as you turn the wheel or load the tyres. And for me, this is one of the biggest settings for making the wheel feel natural. What I want is smooth, progressive build-up force, so as I turn into a corner, the wheel gradually gets heavier and more detailed, not just instantly heavy. If the curve is too aggressive at the start, the wheel can feel overly sharp and tiring to drive. And if the curve is too flat, the wheel can feel dead around the centre with no detail. So what I normally do is keep the beginning of the curve smooth and slightly softer, then let the force build up progressively as corner load increases. This helps small details around the centre while still giving strong force deeper into the corners. It makes the wheel feel much more predictable and much easier to catch slides with. Now, once I've got my curve and equalizer where I want them, I test everything properly. I'll normally do a few clean laps focusing on three things: corner weight, curb detail and grip loss. If the wheel feels too heavy, I'll lower frequency or reduce overall game force feedback slightly. If it feels dull, I increase my mid frequency. And if it feels too harsh or noisy, I lower the high frequency or smooth the curve slightly. This is the biggest thing with force feedback tuning. Don't change loads of settings at once. Make one adjustment, then do a few laps, feel the difference, then tune again. Because once you understand what each setting actually changes, tuning the MOZA R21 Ultra becomes so much easier. And once you finally get it dialed in properly, the amount of detail and confidence you get through the wheel is unreal.